No, no, no, no, no, no. Just turn it off.
Pınar. I have been working as an assistant professor at Istanbul Gelişim Üniversitesi for about 3 years. I have been the head of English Child Development Department for the last 2 years. Welcome to the international success stories organized by Istanbul Gelişim Üniversitesi. On behalf of Istanbul Gelişim Üniversitesi, I greet all audiences with love and respect. Today, William Moiser was awarded as the Child Development Professor of the Year. We will talk to Moiser about his academic success and his suggestions to our students. First of all, I would like to talk about the internationalization vision of our university. Today, Istanbul Gelişim Üniversitesi is one of the preferred first 3 universities in Turkey. Our university aims at continuous development. Istanbul Gelişim Üniversitesi is accredited international accreditation bodies such as AQAS, AHPGC, ABET, and Pearson, and thus it has been Turkey's top universities with accredited programs. Another success of our university in internationalization, all the world's higher education Oscars accepted as Times Higher Education 2019 Asia. In just Istanbul Gelişim Üniversitesi, internationalization strategy category was Oscar finalist from Turkey and proved its success once again by being among the top 7 universities among many successful world universities. Our university, which attaches great importance to internationalization, continues to make a name for itself with its achievements on a global scale. Professor Dr. William Moiser was awarded the Early Childhood Teacher Educator Award by the NAECTE Foundation, an important award in child development. I congratulate you. Welcome, William.
Thank you.
First of all, please, could you introduce yourself briefly?
Well, as you already stated, I'm a professor of child development here at Gelişim University, Istanbul Gelişim Üniversitesi, and I've been in this field my entire adult life.
Okay, why did you choose to be a child development specialist? What happened that led you to do this field?
Well, it's a long story, but it started in my childhood because I had one of those mothers who were just so loving all the time. My mother was the kind of mother who never raised her voice at us 4 children. She never said a harsh word, and she read us stories all the time. So I had this role model for how adults and children should interact. Neither my mother nor my father ever went to college. In fact, my father was a horrible father. He beat us every time he would come home. He was a truck driver. So I never developed a healthy relationship with my father. None of us kids did. We were all deathly afraid of him, and we kind of felt secure around our mother. So my reason for going into the field of child development stems from this bonding I had with my mother as far back as I can remember, having a role model for how to interact with children in a loving way.
Sorry. In addition to child development education, you have a medical doctorate.
Yes.
And then a psychiatry specialty. When did your interest in psychiatry begin?
Well, I think the whole issue of interest in psychiatry and psychology stems from having a healthy enough early childhood. I've always been interested in mental health because emotional social development is the foundation for how our brain even becomes useful in adulthood. So my interest in the field of mental health, which is what we call it in English in the United States, my interest in mental health has been since I started in the field. I originally, my bachelor's degree was in psychology, and then my master's degree was in child development. My first doctorate was in child development, and then my medical degree focused on developmental pediatrics, working with children with special needs.
Why İstanbul Gelişim Üniversitesi?
Good question. Why did I move to Istanbul from the United States? Well, a year ago, because I've only been here 1 year and 2 months, 2 years ago, there was an advertisement in Higher Education Journal, which is a newspaper that professors read to see about positions that are available. I had spent 20 years in the military doing humanitarian and disaster relief missions. I retired from the military in 2009, and I had missed that involvement of helping people. And so I've been very concerned about the Syrian refugees and the psychological damage to the children of the Syrian refugees. So that sparked my interest in coming to Turkey. And when I saw the advertisement for İstanbul Gelişim Üniversitesi wanting a professor of child development, and it's my expertise, I applied and waited and waited and waited, and after months and months of waiting, I was told that they waded through thousands of applications and finally decided on me. So I feel honored that I was selected.
How is being an academic person at İstanbul Gelişim Üniversitesi?
Well, what I particularly like about being at İstanbul Gelişim University is the encouragement to continue research as well as working with students, helping them progress, both undergraduate and graduate students. We are given free rein to explore research projects. And up until this pandemic hit us all, we had many research opportunities that I was exploring, but then kind of the doors were closed until after the pandemic ends. So once we have the vaccine in probably June of 2021, I have every intention of getting back into continuing my research with the children of refugees from Syria.
You have the authorship of 2 books.
Yes.
50 peer-reviewed journal articles and medical textbooks chapters.
Yes.
Could you tell us about these studies?
Well, it's so much. I've written extensively about the field of child development, but not only the development of the child, but also the different aspects of human growth and development, such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, autism, the autism spectrum disorders, and how to interact with children in a way that will not scar the child cognitively, socially, or emotionally while you're helping to reshape the child's behavior, utilizing behavioral mechanisms that can help change behavior, but provide emotional support for the child while you're doing that.
How do you do your research while creating your scientific studies? What are your sources of information?
Well, the research that I have done at the Center for the Study of Child Development for the last 20 years in California, in the United States, stems from other people who laid the groundwork for the research that I do. For the most part, except for the people that get Nobel Prizes for their research, almost all research is duplication studies. Now, for the layperson, what does that mean? A duplication study means there's hardly any new research in any field of endeavor that's done. We just continually do the same research on different subjects to see if we get the same results. And so that, in essence, is what I would do. I just followed on the foundation laid by Erik Erikson and Yuri Bronfenbrenner and Vygotsky and Freud and B.F. Skinner. These individuals, Noam Chomsky, these individuals who have worked in the field for a long time, created a bunch of information that we use as our understanding of how human beings grow and develop. And so there's not one theory that rises above the others. We have to look at all of the 8 major theories eclectically so that we can use them all to understand more effectively how adults need to interact with children to optimize a child's development cognitively, socially, and emotionally.
Thank you. What is your strategy when writing articles and choosing the journals you want to publish these articles? What would you suggest to someone who is just starting to write in the field, for students especially?
Well, it's difficult to get published. One has to just make a commitment to not give up. I have had many, many more rejections than I have articles published. And we're talking about a lot of articles. So of the 50+ articles that I have had published, I have had hundreds of rejection notices. Those just happen. You just have to keep submitting and keep submitting and keep submitting and keep rewriting until it gets accepted. So to answer your question, which types of journals, that is so different than it was 20 years ago. There were fewer journals available 20 years ago than there are today. Now, with so many more journals, all you have to do is Google to find the right candidate journal for your particular article. And if your interest is in the field of child development, the 3 most important journals would be the Journal of Child Development, the Journal of the National Association for the Education of Young Children, and the Journal of the National Association for Early Childhood Teacher Educators. I left out a 4th one because it's not officially a child development journal, but it does fit for Gelişim, because here in Turkey, child development goes from birth to age 18, whereas in the United States, it's birth to age 9, to 4th grade, to the end of primary school. So the 4th journal is the International Childhood Education Journal, which is also an excellent journal to publish in.
What is your most recent scientific study?
My most recent scientific study was working with the refugee children in the United States that I guess I shouldn't, for political reasons, mention. There was a U.S. administration that separated parents and children, and the children were put in housing in detention centers. And so I worked with a group of people who would work with those children, and in my clinic back in the States, I would work with a lot of refugee children from Latin America because of my fluency in Spanish. And since moving here, working with many families, on the days that I don't teach, I typically see patients, and that get referred to me by some of the pediatricians here in Istanbul. And so many of those children are refugees from Afghanistan or Iraq or Syria, and they have so many scars from what we refer to as toxic stress that these adverse childhood experiences can leave scars that'll last a lifetime if we don't get early intervention, which is why it's crucial to work with the children when they're still young to help them overcome the emotional scars from the experiences.
Thank you, William. Let's talk about the child development. What is early intervention in child development?
Well, early intervention is understanding that the earlier we intervene in an attempt to provide interventions and supports for a child, the more cognitive, social, and emotional progress that child will be able to make and toward becoming a more normalized person in society. So early intervention means if a child has experienced, let's say a child is born blind. Now, theoretically, a parent, or often even the pediatrician, will not notice that the child is blind until the parent brings a child to a well baby interview after the child can sit up unassisted. Why is that? Because babies, even who are blind, have a reflex for smiling. So when they're 3 years old, 4 years old, and they're smiling at the parent thinks, my baby can see me, even though they can't. Same thing with the auditorily impaired child. If there's a deaf child, early intervention is crucial because it is typically not until 6 months that a child who is hearing impaired gets identified by a pediatrician. Again, why? The why is because, as Noam Chomsky clearly clarified through his Nobel Prize-winning research, the human brain is pre-programmed for language. So children babble and make sounds like ba ba ba, na na ma ma ma ma, and parents erroneously assume when a 3-month-old is saying ba ba ba, they're calling their father. But if it's a child who has no ability to hear, they're not really talking to father or trying to call mother. Rather, they're just babbling. And so the earlier we can identify a child with a special needs, let's take autism as a third example, the classic example, the earlier we can identify a child with autism spectrum disorder, the earlier the intervention starts happening, the more normalization we can achieve with that child.
What age range does early intervention cover in children?
Well, the age range is as soon as possible. Now, how soon can we identify a child is hearing impaired or visually impaired? Theoretically, a developmental pediatrician can identify this at 3 months. However, like I said, it's typically not identified until 6 months. And that's kind of a day late and a dollar short, but it's at least starting. So the earlier we can identify a child having a developmental problem or experience from toxic stress, like all of these refugee children, the sooner we can help that child gain some sense of emotional normalcy.
How does mother-child attachment that is established securely make the child an individual?
Ooh. Because I don't want it to sound like a blame game against females of the species, let's use the professional term significant other. Every child needs to have a strong attachment with at least one significant other in the first year of life to grow up emotionally and socially healthy. Let me restate that. I'm saying that it is absolutely vital that in the first year of life, there is a strong, healthy attachment with at least one significant other in a child's life. Now, typically it's Anna. Typically it's the mother. So that relationship is absolutely vital for the child growing up being able to have healthy, intimate relationships with their spouse.
How can we support children's self-regulation skills?
Ooh, that is a show all by itself, because that's the bulk of my research is on how to help children learn self-regulation, utilizing premises that we understand from the literature on behavior modification as to how we can help children change their behavior without scarring them cognitively, socially, or emotionally. So how do we help self-regulation? The answer in the short form is by being good role models for socially competent behavior. If we as parents, if we as child development specialists are role models for what constitutes healthy social interaction, children will copy those behaviors that we display.
How do we support gifted children emotionally?
How do we support children emotionally? The most effective way is to just communicate unconditional positive regard to each child. Now, perhaps that sounds easier than it seems to be in reality, because research indicates that there's often a lot of stress in that initial attachment relationship between a child and their significant other, whether it's Baba or Anna, whether it's the mother or the father or Anne, the grandparent, whoever is raising the child. The way children develop a sense of I'm okayness is from unconditional positive regard communicated to the parent at crucial moments, like when you're changing a diaper. Something as seemingly mundane as changing a baby's diaper, if when the parent is changing the diaper you're saying, "Oh, this is disgusting, ugh, ugh," that is communicating to the child what came out of you is bad, and that's damaging to a child's self-esteem. if we communicate to a child lovingly, even at times like feeding and diaper changing, then a child will grow up with a healthy, intact self-esteem. And the only kind of adults who can have healthy relationships with their spouse are individuals who have a healthy self-esteem.
What kind of education is most effective for facility in the learning process?
Oh, I love this question. Whether one's working with college students or children, the whole idea of lecturing somebody, teaching somebody, isn't really how to help people learn. The facilitation of learning is important to understand because all learning is caught, it's not taught. I can't teach you anything. You can't teach me anything that I'm not receptive to learning. You can't learn anything from me that you're not receptive to learning. Therefore, our job as professors, as parents, is to be a facilitator of learning. That is, someone who helps the other person learn, kind of like Vygotsky was in reference to when he said scaffolding learning processes so that we can help the individual right at the teachable moment. And when is that teachable moment? Typically, it's never when we think it is as adults. The teachable moment is typically when the child comes to you and asks a question, or when college students ask questions, which is why I do not like to lecture at students, but rather have dialogue, classroom interaction, communication back and forth, because it's their questions during our discussions that will help facilitate their learning, not some lecture by me.
Okay, thank you, William. Do you think that the issues which should be studied in the field of child development in Turkey?
I think the focus on child development that Turkey has is laudable. It's impressive because there are few countries that have seen the importance of this discipline. In the United States, you do not get the label child development specialist until you have a master's degree. Here, they're seeing it's so important to help individuals get an education in understanding human growth and development, how children grow and develop, that it's even available at the bachelor's degree level. So I think Turkey is ahead of many countries in the world in this issue. What I think would be helpful for Turkey to enhance its focus on is emphasis on working with the refugee children that are already here from this tragic war in Syria, for example.
Okay, what kind of suggestions would you give to students who want to improve themselves in this field?
Just keep reading. My suggestion is, if you want to understand the field of child development, you've got to read. You've just got to understand what Erik Erikson clarified about emotional social development. One has to really follow the literature about Bandera's research on how children learn social competence. We have to follow Yuri Bronfenbrenner's influence about how society influences a child through social media, through television, through things that can potentially scar a child. What students need to do is not give lip service to the research, but actually read it themselves. Not rely on just listening to lectures that professors are giving, but actually read, and read more. I'm a nerd. I'm a diehard. I had 16 years of university. Most people don't spend that much time at the university level, but I'm a lifelong learner. I love to learn. And I stayed as a student for 16 years because I just kept wanting to learn more and more and more. So the answer, the short answer is, read about child development.
Do you think yourself successful enough?
Well, that's an interesting, strange question, because I don't in any way think of myself as successful or not successful. I just see my role as a human being as to be a helper as opposed to a hinderer, to be a person who helps other people. So I don't think in terms of, I guess that goes back to Erik Erikson, because in his emotional social stages of development, the final stage that's a positive stage is generativity. I just see that my responsibility in life as a human being is to help humanity, to be the best person I can be, to treat everyone with respect, to love everyone. And of course, we all make mistakes. Every once in a while, I forget to remember the importance of being kind to others. But I think that's much more important than thinking about success. I just think about the importance of my interactions with other human beings and how every interaction I have might in some way impact that other person. Therefore, I want to be supportive of that other person.
I think you are a very successful person. And last questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any suggestion for candidate universities studies?
Any suggestions for those who want to come? They should definitely study child development at Istanbul Gelişim Üniversitesi.
Okay, thank you very much. Many thanks, William. And I would like to thank all the participants and everyone who contributed to the live broadcast. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here.